Peace and blessings. This brother Grim Freedman with BTP Ali. We are members of Be the Power and the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. We just coming back at you once again. We just dropping this knowledge to make a record of it in the Be the Power group. And as we have conversations and information that we need to unload, we'll come on this forum in an unofficial capacity and without any particular times that we coming on to basically add on to the knowledge that we be putting out there for you all to take into consideration. The name of this particular stream is I Got Indian in My Family. And we always even before these people started this Aboriginal indigenous stuff, we as a community, Black people as a community, we grew up with individuals saying, well, I got Indian in my family as some form of justification for the fact that they may have a finer or a straighter grain of hair, and it's my concept, idea, or theory, or what have you, that these people, usually say this because there's an inferiority complex linked to having coarser or so-called coarser or kinky hair. So the whole I got Indian in my family thing was basically linked to that. It's basically an inferiority complex amongst our people, in my opinion, to basically clarify, or rather to make clear the fact that they are not fully a descendant of freedmen or the descendant of the process of chattel slavery of people who came from the shores of West Africa. Now, here's the other side of that coin. We are not saying that you don't have Indian in your family. We're not saying that at all. But we are saying that, one, it should not be a pretext to denigrate or down or thin out the amount of freedman blood that you have going in your veins and tracing you back to basically the freedman culture. And number two, as far as the indigenous aboriginal thing, it should not be used as a pretext to basically deny that our ancestors originally came from Africa. Ali, you want to add on to that, my brother?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I've identified this whole idea of Black, quote unquote, Black Americans claiming to be Indian, absolutely being rooted in some kind of self hatred, or the fact that look, our people have had a psychological number done on us, right? And it manifests in multiple ways, whether it's through colorism, the way we interact with each other based on skin complexion. We've all heard about the brown paper bag test that our people were placing on each other to be involved in certain organizations, and all that kind of stuff. But it's definitely rooted in the slave mentality, and I would say the slave mentality, and the fact that this psychological job has been done on people of African descent, where they've been made to feel inferior, like you said, the inferiority complex, inferior to people with straight hair, lighter skin, lighter colored eyes, thinner noses, thinner lips, and things of that nature, based on the fact that we have African ancestry, right? Particularly West African ancestry. We know that those people are the people that were brought across the Atlantic during the transatlantic slave trade to the Americas, not just North America, but also to the Caribbean and South America as well. And so that particular history is a history that is one of denigration, obviously, and that's a very hard thing for a lot of people to deal with, particularly for the number of years that it occurred, and And the fact that we to this day still dealing with the plight of freedom, and you know, fighting for freedom in this country and in other places around the world. So it's hard for a lot of our folks to accept that that is a significant part of our history, and it's a significant part of the shaping of who we are as people in this society today.
Indeed, bro. And the whole thing is this, you know, we are not discounting, and you 1,000% right. And we not, you know, and for clarification to the people out there, you know, we are not discounting black and Indian relations, relationships, as far as black people uniting. You know, this is what made the Gullah Wars. This is what made the Seminole Wars, the Indian Wars, was the fact that blacks and Indians were uniting. You know, Maroons and Indians were uniting to basically fight the the colonizing powers that were coming into the southern regions to as a land grab and to set up their governments and their power. We not discounting that, and we can be proud of that history of a black and Indian union to basically fight off the oppressors during that day and time. It's a great thing. It's a real powerful, and it's a real interesting history. And I will be the first to tell you that because, you know, Brother Ali, myself, Naheem, Logic, we've studied that history in detail. And what these African Americans, African and Aboriginal indigenous more people really don't understand now is that we come from those schools before a lot of these people was even out of elementary school. You know what I'm saying? That we've basically studied that information. But we're not saying if you are part of that heritage, if you are a descendant of a Cherokee freedman and you really got Indian in your family, that's fine. We're not discrediting and disrespecting that by the least stretch of the imagination. We're not doing that, you know. But we are saying that, like what Ali said, there's been a psychological trick done on people of African descent, namely the people of well, really people all around the world, people of African descent all around the world. But we are specifically talking about the descendants of freedmen. And that's why a lot of this African American ain't African, and a lot of this indigenous Moor stuff, man, is really a discredit to our people. Now, there's a book by, I believe his name is William Loren Katz, I believe his name is, who read the book. It's a book about Black Indians. You know, I had a copy of the book that I read, you know, and the book is a powerful, inspiring history about the relationship of blacks and Indians and how we basically came together to fight oppression, you know, particularly in the Georgia and the Florida areas and maybe other areas, you know. But even that book itself never made the claim that the descendants of freedmen or the black freedmen or the people that's termed African Americans themselves are those indigenous tribes, you know. And
right,
you know, it never made that claim. So, you know, you basically what you have with these Aboriginal indigenous Moor people, the top cats of the world, the Dane Callaways of the world, they are taking this information and superimposing it on top of their false chronologies of who the descendants of Africa in America term African Americans or the descendants of freedmen. They just basically grafting, taking little portions of stuff and grafting a whole new narrative of it and misleading hundreds of people, you know. And I think it's bad, and it goes into our inferiority complex that somebody would be ashamed, number one, to be a descendant of the freedmen who fought through the institution of slavery, the descendants of slaves, as you will. So what they do, Ali, is to add to that narrative, they'll say people like Harriet Tubman didn't exist. That was a fiction created by Europeans. Or they would say stuff like back in the day when we was coming up, they was basically saying, you know, you had the brother Ali Muhammad who was out there talking about Benjamin Banneker and Benjamin Franklin was the same person. You know, it's these
That's
preposterous,
crazy.
you know, these preposterous false historians amongst us with the flair that basically mislead our people, bro.
Yep. Yep. Because our people are drawn to those kinds of confidence men. You know, and I can't say it's just our people. I think people, period, are drawn to confidence men. You know, there's a whole bunch of them. You know, not just amongst our group. And so I don't want to just put that on us like we're some kind of we have some kind of specific pathology that's specific to us. It's not just us, you know, but you know, again, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I remember even growing up, you know, before the whole Aboriginal indigenous thing, I remember a lot of people talking about, for whatever the reason, the Cherokee um, is a very popular one that people try to associate themselves with. You know, I had Cherokee in my family. You know, my family had Cherokee ancestors and this, that, and the other. So that's something that I heard a lot growing up. The Cherokee. As a matter of fact, I actually know a girl who calls herself Cherokee. That was her actual nickname. But to be honest with you, from what I've seen of her ancestry, she ain't got nothing to do with Cherokee. I don't even think that her people are native Black Americans, so I don't even know where the Cherokee would even come from. Not as a descendant of actual Cherokee ancestry, or even as a descendant of someone who might have been enslaved by the Cherokees. You know, so I have no idea, but the Cherokee was a very popular group of people that many Blacks in America would attach themselves to for whatever reason. That was one of the more popular ones. Um, but yeah, it's an anti-African ethnicity sentiment to me that undergirds all of this stuff. And undergirds all of this stuff. There's a lot of it. And be honest, inside of the ADOS movement, there's an anti-African sentiment that is a part of a lot of the rhetoric that you see going on coming from people like Yvette Carnell. I'm not even going to lie. There's an
Right.
anti-African ethnic rhetoric there that has caught on, even as we're uplifting our tribe in this country. But the one thing we have to be honest about our tribe of people in this country, yes, we are a mixed group of people, right? I always say we're an amalgamated new tribe of amalgamated people that consists of multiple African ethnicities, as well as some European and some Native American. We're a new tribe, but you cannot deny, when you start talking about lineage, you cannot deny that their lineage will take you to West African ethnic groups. That's something you can't deny. Yes, we're going to uplift our freedmen ancestry and our enslaved ancestors who, in spite of slavery, endured and persevered. Freedom fighters, people who came through that institution. But at the same time, when you start having conversations about lineage, you can't stop at the institution of slavery, because the institution of slavery created a new tribe out of a whole slew of ethnic groups, which we have the names of. We have the names of many of those ethnic groups of West African ancestry that creates this new tribe of people called the Freedmen. So it would be totally insane for us as descendants of the inhabitants of Africa to now carry an anti-African sentiment. I don't care whether some Nigerian today is calling our people Akata, or whatever names any of those other people today in Africa today have for us has absolutely nothing to do with the actual historical fact, the genealogical fact that our ancestry is that of Wolof, of Hausa, of Mandinka, of Fula, etc., and on and on and on. That is your ancestry. That's your lineage. You can't deny that because you have a problem with some people living in Africa today and immigrants coming here today with this anti-African American or anti-Native Black American sentiment. That's completely foolish. So yes, this idea of anti-African, this anti-African sentiment, it manifests itself in a number of ways in a number of places. It's inside the ADOS movement. There are a lot of people who carry it in different movements today here in America. And the same thing is manifesting itself in another way with this Aboriginal indigenous claim of ancestry to these tribes who actually enslaved people of African descent. So, that's my thought, brother.
Right. Exactly, man. And I'm with you 100%, man. And, in order to achieve this, a lot of the so-called teachers and historians and the proponents of this type of stuff, they have to resort to great and impossible acrobatics, man, historical acrobatics to pull this stuff off. Now, we're not talking about ancient Africans who may have voyaged over here under the authority of what's the brother name? The Mulai Ishmael. I think his name was the predecessor of Mansa Musa. We not denying any African contacts with the Western Hemisphere. We're not denying the fact that before the pre-Columbian era or before Columbus, I mean, we have noted that Ivan van Sertima have chronicled this history along with some of his other colleagues, in the study of African American, ancient Africans coming over here to the Western Hemisphere, namely to South America, Mexico, the Olmec civilizations. We're not saying that because we know that those people were smart, intelligent, ingenious people capable, of doing that kind of stuff. So we're not denying those contacts, but what we are saying is that was thousands of years ago, and that those people did not become the Aboriginal and indigenous Choctaw, Cherokee, or whatever the tribes are, the Creeks and all of this kind of stuff. And Brother Ali and Brother Logic made an excellent breakdown of the fact that even as some of these tribes, if we was going through slavery, the powerful elites and stuff like that of some of these tribes eventually adopted the practice and started buying black slave descendants for slaves themselves. I mean, they beautifully chronicled that history. So, that's basically part of it, and we're not saying that, again, just going back to what I was saying earlier, we're not saying that. Let me share something real quick before I go any further.
Mm-hmm. I'll say this while you're pulling that up.
Yes, sir.
I'll say this. One of the things I told the guy Top Cat when he first called into our show, which was about Dane Calloway, who had been around for a number of years, making certain claims, particularly that African Americans ain't African. One of the things I told Top Cat was that I would never deny someone's ancestry, right? Because everybody's ancestry, their lineage, their genealogy is personal to them and their families, right? I don't know I'm not qualified to tell somebody what they are or are not, but neither is he. And see, that's the whole point. So when people like him or Dane Calloway are pushing these narratives on the people known as Black Americans, that they are not of African ethnicity, but instead of Native American ethnicity, there's no way for you to scientifically prove something like that without doing the actual genealogical research into each individual's ancestral lines, right? And each time you go back a generation, those ancestral lineages double. They double. You have multiple lines of ancestry each time you go back a generation. And so there's no way that you can tell somebody that they're an Indian for just for the sake of what we're talking about, an American Indian, just from looking at them like that. You can't do that. Right now, there are some people who have a certain type of phenotype where you can look at them, right? And usually these are the people who are the ones living on these reservations that carry the culture, that still carry the customs, that still carry the language. You know what I'm saying? Uh, that still carry the specific religious practices of the people. Uh, know the alphabets of those people. All of that kind of stuff. That's different, right? Because through custom and through culture, you can tell that those people are members of those tribes. But I'm talking about the people known as Black Americans here in this country, who live in the inner cities of America, who live in the suburbs of America, who are known as Black Americans, who are known as African Americans, who come from the ancestry known as Negro. You can't just look at people and make this broad generalization about them not having any African ancestry, but instead being purely of a Native American stock. There's no way that you can scientifically do something like that without even knowing the individual's actual genealogical background. You can't do that, right? And so this is what I was trying to explain to him, which obviously went over his head, right? He doesn't understand that, because for him and people like Dan Calloway, this thing is some kind of a hustle. It has to be. It has to be. But I see you have your thing pulled up, so I'm gonna pause there.
Exactly. Nah, you're right, man. That's exactly what it is a hustle, And we've been saying this now for years, but it's really manifested now, man. And it's just like with these knowledge is the new hustle. So instead of them, knowledge is the new hustle. So these guys can't go out in the street and hustle like they used to, or scared to hustle or something like that. So what they do is they see other people pulling out knowledge, right? They misinterpret those facts and be like, man, I can make money off this. Or see somebody else who was already misusing it and say, I can make money off of this. So what they end up doing is they got all of these snap and what they call these things now, these cash apps and this app and that app. And man, basically, man, people are making money. You follow what I'm saying? Off of the public's desire for knowledge, Ali. That's
Exactly.
all they're doing, man. And they may be making a killing, they may not, I don't know. But the bottom line, man, is they pimping out knowledge. And at the same time, the reason why we not pocket watching nobody, I don't care about what they're making, but at the same time, they're misleading people and giving people a lot of false information. So I got this screen share up here that this is a book that a lot of those people use, which is a book by William Loren Katz, right? Mm-hmm. And it talks about the Black and Indian, and they call it a hidden heritage. Now they'll use this kind of book, right? They'll find something like this, and they'll use this information to try to prove that the descendants of freedmen or Aboriginal and indigenous. Well, let me stop right there and say this, because something that you said, Ali, made me think about something. When you talked about the people who live on the reservations, who still write the alphabet and still speak the language, man. And you know, a lot of people may disagree with this from their side, but man, when I think about it, bro, that's like really unfair to these indigenous Native American tribes that may be living in the inner cities and that may be living in the reservations or what have you, that you have descendants of freedmen, right, in this country saying, you know, basically screw them, we the original Indians and y'all just counterfeiting.
Right.
Say, bro, just think about that. You know what I'm saying?
Because
And uh-huh.
because you know what they're really talking about is the fact that this stock of so-called black Indians, and certain uh, certain documentations of Spaniards or Portuguese, they came across these people in South America, dark-skinned people, and they would call them Negro de terra. Obviously, that's a Latin phrase, Negro de terra. So Negroes of the land or blacks of the land. And these are people that they encountered, the Spaniards or whoever, Spaniards or Portuguese encountered as they came into the Americas. They didn't come to North America first. They came to the Caribbean and to South America. And these are the kinds of people they're talking about. They encountered, whether they be the dark-skinned Arawaks of the Caribbean, the Arawaks of the Caribbean. If you look up images of the Arawak people of the Caribbean, you'll see they're very dark-skinned people. They don't look like African Americans in any way, but they were very dark-skinned people. Same thing with the so-called Amaru people of South America, right? They may have been very dark-skinned people, but they don't look like us, right? People have this thing that because of complexion, that we're all the same people, and that's not true. Melanin does not make us all the same. You have people of the Indian continent who are darker in complexion than African Americans. Many of them darker in complexion than African Americans, with jet black straight hair, right? Don't look anything like an African American, but they have melanin very obviously. And so a lot of these people are rooting their argument in the idea that black people were the original natives of this place before the Mongoloid, so-called the Mongoloid stock of Indians actually came here, whether it was through the Bering Straits or however they got here. So that's what they're really talking about, you know, and they're trying to say that the black or dark-skinned people that these people call the Negros de terra are the original people or the original inhabitants of these lands called Americas before the Mongoloids. I just wanted to say that.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. And man, you know, it's an excellent point. It's an excellent point, man. And you know, as you grow in wisdom, oh, somebody, I think, oh, that's me. That's my screen share. All right. Like I just want to read this real quick, right? This is Black Indians, a hidden heritage. So what they'll do is they'll take a book like this and they'll blow it out of proportions. Is Black Indians a hidden heritage? Yes. Would they have not liked to know that, you know, they had Indians and Black people working together against oppression and working together in communities and working together, basically sharing ancestral knowledge and stuff like that? Because, you know, as a sidebar, when you look at African American esoteric practices, just to show you that these people are not the Aboriginal indigenous people on this side of the continent, when you look at African American esoteric and spiritual practices, like when our ancestors came over here, they weren't allowed to practice their full original religions, traditions, and cultures, right? So that went on to their that translated also into their spiritual practices. So basically what you have is two native types of people, indigenous and aboriginals to their side of the world, these people Aboriginal indigenous to here, we Aboriginal indigenous to the African continent. So when we came over here, it was certain things that we couldn't practice as far as spirituality and root work and conjure and all of that kind of stuff. So our freedmen ancestors or black ancestors, you know, basically consulted with Indians, whereas in Africa, a certain root or plant would be associated with certain types of healing or certain type of spiritual modalities, right? Or healing modalities. So as we had relationships with Indians, we would ask Indians, hey, what does this do spiritually? Or what does that do medicinally and things of that nature? So the African American pharmacopoeia was basically subsidized by the Indian or the Native American spiritual and medicinal pharmacopoeia. So that when you get into that history of that information, it'll show you that we both that we came from another side of the world, because we brought over here practices and traditions, the ones that they couldn't destroy, basically materialized in African American culture. You know, things like jumping the broom and sweeping the dirt out of your house, you know, from front to back and out the front door. Just a whole bunch of Africanisms that we brought over here, you know. And a lot of our spiritual traditions, we have more Africanism spiritual traditions amongst us than we have Native Americans as a people. You follow what I'm saying? So, you know, I just wanted to basically bring that out just to show, you know, that we came over here with Africa, and not only did we change those Africanisms or African points of culture that we was able to maintain over here, but those Africanisms totally affected American culture and diet, and they adopted them, you know. So, you know, but with this, I just want to read this real quick. This is the book that a lot of them will try to use, and it's a beautiful book. I love this book. I love this history, right? It says the classic Black Indians has been updated and reissued. This startling and readable work of people's history chronicles both the attempts to keep Black people and Indians divided in the Americas. So if they talk about keeping us divided, even William Llewellyn Cats even know that we dealing with two different people. We dealing with the descendants of slaves, right? And Native Americans, right? We're not dealing with people who are one or people who overtook the other, as they'll probably try to say when they talk the Mongoloid talk. And it says, as one French colonist documented, between the races, we cannot dig too deep a gulf. But the digging was not always successful, and much of the drama of Cat's book is found in the inspiring instances of Black Indian unity. So they're talking about us coming together, as in the Seminole Wars, like I talked about earlier, and the two lessons on the Zen Project website draw on the Black Indians, the color line, about the conscious efforts in early America to create divisions between the races, and the Cherokee Seminole removal role play, which helps students explore events leading up to the Trail of Tears. The expanded and updated edition brings the Native American and African American what? Alliance. You hear that, Ali? The African American and the the Native American and African American alliance. So if they had an alliance, right? If they had an alliance, you talking about two different people who came together as one, not one who was always here and the other one being an imposter or Johnny come lately, so to speak, you know. And it's a beautiful history to address, and a beautiful history to be talking about, right? So the new edition reveals the story of African guides and translators of the colonial era who became valued contacts with indigenous people, examines the African and Indian alliances known as the Pueblo Revolt of 1680 that ended Spain's rule in the Southwest for a dozen years. It introduces Francisco Menendez and the 1738 Black Indian communities that defended its liberty in Florida against British incursions, and describes the Lowry gang in North Carolina that fought the Civil War, North Carolina that fought the Civil War Confederacy and then battled the KKK. So it's a beautiful history, but what these guys are doing is that they are misinterpreting the facts, man. And they have to do tremendous acrobatics historically to counter this stuff. And it's just a horrible thing that they are doing, man. And I'm guilty of doing the same thing myself, because I've come from those things, studying Washington and different aspects of Moorish science and things of that nature, you know. So that's where we at with this thing. You wanted to add, Brother Ali? Yeah, okay, Brother Ali. I'm sorry you dropped off the stream, brother. Yeah, you with me?
Yeah, I'm here now.
Okay,
Sorry
you
about
wanted
that.
to add to that, my brother?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point of reference there. It's, you're absolutely right. In order to make a lot of these points stick, there's a lot of gymnastics that has to be done. There's a lot of ignorance that has to be accepted. And, again, to do this without scientific methodology is just preposterous to me. It's preposterous. This is the very reason why you have people who specialize in genealogical research, right? Because ultimately what this is about proving a certain point. And that particular point is that African Americans ain't African, but African Americans are actually descendants of Native Americans or some Indian stock of people in North America. I don't even know that there were historically, quote unquote, Black Indians in the Americas that Europeans found. I've never seen any descriptions that I mean, and I could be off on this, but most of the descriptions of Native people as being Negroes, right, seem to be from either Central or South America. I've never seen any documentation speaking about Negro Indians in North America. Maybe you've seen it, bro, but most of the things that I've seen talking about Negro tribes encountered by Europeans were always speaking about either Central or South America. So I don't even know how this became an issue in North America for our people, talking about being descendants of some Negro Indian tribes or Negro native or indigenous tribes of people. Even when the brother Ali Muhammad was pushing the whole Amaru thing, which I think he still does, but you don't see him as much on social media as you used to. The Amaru people are South American people. So now you have to explain that if African Americans are descendants of South Americans, now you got to explain the migration. How did we get from South America as Amaru people to the freaking colonies in the United States, which became the United States?
And then become Choctaw, Washington, and Cherokee all at the same time.
Oh my God. This is insane, man. So what I want to do is I want to look into that just a little bit further. Are there any documents that speak to the idea that there were even Negro indigenous people in North America? I've never seen nothing like that.
Right. And like we say, man, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it in ancient times, Ali. But we have to look into the fact that they were here, those people probably died off, so to speak, and that, you know, those indigenous people or those ancient African travelers, they did not become these Choctaw, Washita, Cherokees, Wichita, or Plains Indians, whatever you wanted to call it, you know, the Kushada. I mean, you know, they did not become these things. We formed unions with these people and intermarried. If you got Indian heritage, great. If you can trace your, that's fine. We're not denying that, man, but stop culture jacking. You know what, Ali? We did the same thing that we accuse the Europeans of, man.
Mm-hmm.
And the Europeans will come up, you know, anciently, you know, if we talk about the ancient Egyptian or Kemetic civilizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we point out those civilizations like Kemet, and we'll say that Kemet was a black or ancient civilization. Now we know that there was a Greco-Roman invasions of Egypt. And after a while, the Romans or the Greco-Romans basically started girding themselves in the culture of the Egyptians. So that's the problem that we'll have, is that you'll see a particular iconography or a picture of a Greco-Roman person looking like a pharaoh, and some of the scholars will say, see, look, the Egyptians were never black. You follow what I'm saying? Or let's just look at it from a Judeo-Christian perspective for the people who relate to Afrocentric aspect of the Judeo-Christian paradigm, right? Who might say that the quote unquote original Jews were African or Africoid people, right? They make, you know, they say that later on, you know, the people basically became European because the Europeans came in and basically usurped what was once an African expression, right? So, you know, with that being said, when they do that, you know, with the Indian thing, they doing the same thing that they accused the European of doing, as far as like usurping their traditions and cultures. You follow what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So, exactly. And I feel you. I feel you on that, man. They a lot of that stuff, man. You know, they can't basically show. You know, if you can show me the footprints of some Australoid traveler, and that Australoid traveler anciently was black, and you say, hey, man, this dude had kinky hair, black, and they found him in Minnesota. Well, you know, you talking about Australoid contacts that basically still ties in with the with Gibraltar Strait type theory and people moving, but there's no way you could say that the people or the stock that we come from is the Aboriginal people that was living over here.
Right. Now, bro, I put, before I had dropped off, I had put 2 points in the back chat. Can you see those points in the back chat here on this StreamYard piece? I kind of want to touch on those 2 points. I'm not able to see them right now. Are you still able to see them?
You want me to read them?
Yeah, I would like to, if we could, just touch on those 2 points. You know what I mean? You can read it if you want, or just go in on it.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. The point, I don't believe that there were black indigenous tribes, and not that one.
Yeah, that one, and then there was another one that we kind of touched on that one already.
Okay, I'll read them. I don't believe there were black indigenous tribes in America. However, Ishmael pulls something that Europeans talked about Mauritanian lands in what is today the United States. Mauritanians ain't native Indians, right? That was one point. The other point was, what exactly are those claiming to be? What are those claiming to be indigenous trying to achieve? Are they claiming not to be citizens of the United States because the 1923 Indian Citizenship Act made all Native Americans citizens of the United States? Go ahead, go in, brother.
Well, yeah, that was something that I'm trying to understand, because I don't know, other than the this anti-African ethnicity sentiment that's kind of like supporting their positions in terms of not wanting to be associated with African ethnicity, but instead Indian stock of some sort. My thing is, what is it that they're trying to achieve by this? There has to be something that you're trying to get from it. Is it a thing of you're trying to make the point that you're not citizens of the United States in some kind of way? Like, I don't really know what the point is. What are they trying to achieve by making these claims, other than, like I said, disassociating themselves from the African continent? What are they trying to achieve? Are they trying to achieve some kind of political status that separates them from the United States? Because if that's the case, then yes, the Indian Citizenship Act did make them citizens of the United States in 1923. And to that point, because Josh raised a point about a clubhouse conversation they were having last night, where they were talking about freedmen weren't citizens of the United States, which is false, right? We touched on this in a very significant way about Native Black Americans being day one citizens from the gate, from the time of the founding of the United States on up, right? You have people like Prince Hall, right? Prince Hall is a major. There was an article that I just saw and posted in the BETHEPOWER group. I think I posted the article link in the BETHEPOWER group yesterday, and it talks about Black founding fathers and Prince Hall being among them, right? Being one of the significant people who fought in the American Revolution, but was also a part of the people of the United States at the adoption of the Declaration of Independence, fighting with the so-called patriots against the British. So you had thousands of Black dudes fighting against the British in the American Revolution. This is an actual fact. And you have a group of people, historians, who are doing a lot of research and digging up those names and finding out that it's even more than we originally thought that actually fought on the side of the patriots at the founding of the United States in terms of its declaration of independence and sovereignty from Britain. So you can't say that we weren't citizens. From day one, our people were citizens. There's nobody in 2021 who can tell who has the right to tell someone like a Prince Hall, a significant figure in American history, that he did not have the right to consider himself an American citizen or a member of this American society in a significant way, just as significant as any other European who were fighting against their own sovereign nation, Britain. How are we in a position in this day and time to try to tell people like that they weren't citizens of the United States at the founding of this thing under the Declaration of Independence? The Declaration of Independence doesn't say anything about white people. Doesn't say anything about white people being the only people declaring their independence and declaring their sovereignty as a nation here. It doesn't say that. The Treaty of Paris doesn't even say when Britain, and I think it was in 1783, the Treaty of Paris doesn't say the white people of the United States are now independent and sovereign people. The United States Constitution in its preamble says we the people. It doesn't say anything about we the white people. And mind you, we talked about this. It very well could have. They were very much in 1787, very much aware of the racial classifications of Black and white. And they very well could have said, we the white people ordain and establish this Constitution, etc., etc. It could very well have said during the Declaration of Independence in 1776, that they were well aware of white and Negro, that the white man is created free and equal, etc., and had the right to liberty and life and all of these things. But they didn't put that in there. You know why? Because they debated that stuff. They debated whether to put white in the Declaration of Independence, and the majority of the colonies overruled the ones that did want to put white in the Declaration of Independence. That was an actual debate. There were certain people in certain southern colonies that wanted to, like South Carolina, I believe, was one of the colonies that wanted to put that all white men were created equal. And they debated that in the Continental Congress, and it got struck down. They were overruled by the majority of the other colonies. Same thing during not the Articles of Confederation, but the same thing during the United States Constitution and drafting the preamble. There were certain people who wanted to say, we, the white people of the United States, do ordain and establish, but they didn't allow that to happen because there were black people who were involved in the ratification and adoption of the Constitution as the unifying document. So from day one, blacks had been citizens of the United States, and a lot of people erroneously believe that they weren't. This was touched on in the Dred Scott case when Justice Curtis went into it. You put me onto that, bro. Justice Curtis breaking down the history of the black involvement in the founding of this country and the establishment of the United States Constitution as the unifying document. He goes into significant history and the legalities of black people's involvement. So when people like Top Cat say that freedmen weren't citizens and try to imply Top Cat or even the Moors, or try to imply that the 14th Amendment is the thing that made black people citizens of the United States, is false, because there's nothing in the 14th Amendment that says anything about black people being citizens. Nothing. It's not in the language.
Powerful, brother. Powerful information, man. And that's the bottom line. And this, to add to what you're saying as well, Ali, what people don't understand is that, and we talked about this too, I think I covered it in one of my old shows on one of my old channels. Some of those videos I took down because it was too laden with trying to tie that everything was in the prophet, trying to tie it into that. But it was some valuable information that, basically, like, this slavery was this progressive institution that when slavery came to the States, via the Anglo-Saxons and the other related European ethnicities, but even before that, but primarily the Anglo-Saxon identity, we didn't have chattel slavery the way that we had it in the 1800s. It was a progressive institution.
That's right.
Just tying that into what you were saying, that those people debated putting those languages in there, and they didn't. But they had a financial interest. The farmers and the producers had a financial interest in bondage. So they had a problem with what they call indentured servitude, because what ended up happening is that indentured servitude didn't really serve the purposes for what they was trying to do, because basically, I think after a person served you for so many years, you had to give them some money, you had to let them go, you had to get them some land. So eventually, things like that is cutting into your underlying profit. So the laws became progressively more imprisoning to the fact of chattel slavery and the idea that you can never be free and that you're not free. You was born a slave. Your children go belong to me. Your children's children. Those things didn't initially come in with common law, and they couldn't find no root in common law. So what ended up happening is that they began to pass more legislation to basically disenfranchise the black founding fathers and the black citizens of this country who were citizens with disabilities, to basically further disenfranchise them for rights perpetually. And that's right. What the concept of perpetual slavery in America come from. It was a progressive march towards a law and towards a legislation to where our people could never be free.
That's right.
And they just kept kicking the can of black rights and suffrage down the road to what? Abraham Lincoln, which then in turn fueled a war which we call what? The Civil War.
Right.
I hope the people are understanding what I'm saying. This was a progressive instant because, you know, case in point being Mumbet.
Yes.
We always talk about Mumbet, right? It was people like Mumbet and probably several others who were actually slaves who what sued for their freedom. Why? Because see, the laws during that time wasn't all the way tight knit to keep some of our people in perpetual slavery. So some of our people was being enslaved and being given relief by the courts from ownership and in those institutions, or ownership of the people in those institutions.
Mm-hmm.
You follow what I'm saying? So what ends up happening, they just kept tightening up the laws. Because the thing about it, that the show people always, and the Moors always talk about, oh, the Dread Rights case said that a Negro can't be a citizen. But it don't say that a Moor could be a citizen either.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? So, you know, when they talk about this Dred Scott case, and that the Negro has no rights that the white man is bound to respect, that junk was the reason why he was able to make that is because of the progressive march of the enslavement laws that had took place from the 1700s to the 1800s. But the Mumbet case made, you know, if people was looking at it, they wasn't. The Mumbet case basically made obsolete the Dred Scott case, or the Dred Scott decision, because if I'm not mistaken, Mumbet sued for her freedom and received relief before the
Dred
Scott case was even decided.
Oh yeah, Mumbet was in the 1700s. I believe. I'm trying to remember. I think it was somewhere around 1783, if I'm not mistaken. We could look that up real quick. I think it was somewhere around 1783, or four. It was her, and then there was another case by a man named Kwak or Kwaku or something like that. They were called the Freedom Suits, and basically, what
It was
she was what
1781.
1781. Yeah. And so, you know, that comes right behind the Somerset case, right? The Somerset versus Stewart case, which was actually a case that was in England in 1770, something like that, right before I think Somerset versus Stewart was in 1774, I believe, somewhere around there, 1773 or two, between 1772 and 1774.
Right.
Somerset versus Stewart, which was a significant case which related to slavery in the colonies, and Britain being the sovereign nation at the time, undermining the institution of slavery based on the ideas of the colonials who were trying to preserve that institution. And so, in part, that played a role in leading up to the American Revolution. But shortly after, you know, you have the Mumbet case, where she's suing for her freedom based on the constitution of her state, right, saying that freedom, that slavery was inconsistent with the Constitution. In other words, it was unconstitutional. And so this woman actually helped with the phasing out of slavery in her state, her particular freedom suit. And this is before the Dred Scott case. Obviously, the Articles of Association, the Articles of Confederation was the ruling document at the time. So it wasn't under the Constitution of 1787, 88, but still it was under the United States. And under the United States, this woman, unlike what Justice Taney was saying in the Dred Scott case, that Black people had no rights that white folks was bound to respect, this woman actually showed and proved that according to the Constitution of her state, that slavery was inconsistent, and they had to free her and eventually phase slavery out in that particular state where she was from, based on her suit. And the other brother, I think his name is Kwak. If you have that pulled up, you'll see that his name is associated with hers as a part of the so-called freedom suits that occurred at that particular time in that year. So I'm just saying that, yeah, that case, Justice Curtis, his opinion, not Curtis, Justice Taney's opinions in the Dred Scott case was rooted in white supremacist ideology. It was not rooted in law, history, or fact. It was just his opinions based on his racist superiority complex and ideas that Black folks were supposed to be subjugated and supposed to be the property of so-called white men. That's what that was.
Right. Yeah. And Justice Taney had a relational a relationship with about a bunch of the rich planters. So, yes, you know, it was basically a power political judicial move by Justice Taney based upon his relationship with you know, rich, powerful Southern planters and plantations, you know. But hey, Ali, you know, this just hit me, bro, and I'm about to knock him over the head with this one. Man, you know what? Mom Bet name really, I mean, you know, her other name was,
I know her name.
Huh?
I know it. I know what it is. Go ahead.
Elizabeth Freedmen.
That's right. That's her name.
That just hit me, bro.
Mm-hmm. Elizabeth Freedmen. Yes, indeed.
Right.
Yes, indeed, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, listen, I know they try to undermine the freedmen and freemen identity of our people, but the fact of the matter is that particular identity is well documented in United States history, United States government records, right? Obviously with the Freedmen's Bureau. And they try to undermine it by saying white people weren't freedmen. White people weren't the freedmen. The freedmen who they're talking about, they identify as members of the African race. There's documents of this stuff. White folks, people that are classified as white, are not also considered members of the African race.
Right.
These are in the American government records. You can't get around that. Can't get around that. And even the freedmen of the so-called 5 civilized tribes were also considered the members of the African race who were enslaved by the native Indian people of the so-called 5 civilized tribes. Those are just people who accepted Christianity and the ways of the European devil. That's why they call them civilized, because they accepted the ways of the European Christian.
That's a fact. That's a fact, brother. 100% fact, man. Yep. With them and the ability to accept the fact that they could take on black slaves.
Yes, exactly. So if you could take on black slaves, that means you're a civilized group of people. Other than that, you're a savage. Because remember, their name for those Native American people was savage. That's what they called them. Right. Savages.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because they weren't Christians. And one of the main reasons they was calling them savages because they weren't Christians.
Mm-hmm. That's a fact, brother. You know, and man, I'm proud, man, of the maroon heritage, man, in North America, and maybe the maroon heritage. Well, I ain't gonna say maybe, but the maroon heritage that I have flowing through my very blood, through my very veins. You know what I'm saying? And yeah. I'm proud of the fact that my ancestors and stuff broke free, some of them from slavery, and you know, lived in the swamps and lived a life of rebellion against this this system, man. But I'm not gonna never say that I don't have no history or heritage to tie to the continent of Africa is being taken from there, man, and brought here, man. And another thing too, I want to address, Ali, man, is this whole hair texture thing. Mm-hmm. And people would use the fact that they have straight hair to identify them as either the indigenous Americans or even to deny, you know, full-blooded freedmen bloodline. Because we was talking about it earlier, man. And I basically, I want to pull this up real quick because Ali, you did extensive research on this. So would I be wrong to say that a part of the amalgam of the descendants of freedmen consist of tribesmen from Yoruba, Fulani, Hausa, the people from Benin, and the people from Congo. Would I be wrong to say that African Americans come from the stock of the mixture of those people?
Nope. And what I would say is that is backed up by historical record. The Whitney Plantation, which right down there where you are, has a whole website and a page on the website dedicated specifically to the ethnicities that they kept track of the different people of West Africa that they brought into that plantation. There's a whole list of people, right? And yes, those people are on the list. People from Congo, people from the people who ethnicity was Hausa, people whose ethnicity was Igbo, people whose ethnicity was Mandinka, or you know, a Fula, of Fulbe or Fulani, right? You have all of these people who they didn't necessarily keep track of everyone's names, but they kept a track of the ethnicities of the people that they brought in. Right. And so, yes, this is backed up by the historical records as kept on certain plantations, through certain historians in their records, as well as when you do your DNA research through different genetics tests through genetics and stuff, you find out that research through the DNA testing, which my sister did, and my sister and I have the same parents. Both my sister and I have the same mother and the same father. So it's safe for me to say that her DNA testing finds through her DNA genetics will be very similar to mine. And what it shows is that our family had West African ancestry, which is in line with what the historians documented, which is in line with what's been kept in terms of the records of these different plantation owners, etc., who kept records of the ethnicities of the people that they brought into those plantations.
Right. Absolutely, man. And I'm glad you said that. That was an excellent breakdown. And that segues on to this. I'm gonna go ahead and screen share. Wait, give me 1 second. I'm gonna square some things away real quick. So this is a simple Google search, and I want to square this away. So the point that I was making with what Ali broke down is that just because you may have a straight texture of hair doesn't necessarily reflect your Native American ancestry, and it may not even reflect the European ancestry that you have in your blood, but it could reflect this. Now, Ali was talking about the different tribes. This is one. You just Google. This is basically a Google of Fulani women. I'm gonna try to figure out how I blow this up. Let me know if I blow this up, brother Ali. If you could see it.
Okay, I can see it good now.
You can see it good.
Yeah, but you could. I mean, if you click on one of the images, maybe it'll get larger or whatever.
All right. So, how about that? Can you see that?
Yeah. Maybe click on it again and see if it takes you to the page. Yeah, there you go. Now you gotta scroll up.
Yeah. So I just scroll up, and if you see this is the image of Fulani women. Now this is a group, or one of the groups, or the stock of women, or the stock of people, I should say, that basically were included in the African slave trade. You follow what I'm saying? And
That's
when you look at the texture of these women hair, right? These women have straight Indian hair, quote unquote. Notice I say quote unquote. So if you pop off and you have hair like this, or your children have hair like this, it's not an indicator of some Indian relation. It very well may be your African ancestry coming through people like the different types of hair textures, like the Fulani and the Hausas and the different types of Yoruba people or whatever. So it might
That's
not
right.
necessarily reflect that you have Indian in your family, and your Indian in your family, quote unquote, uh, might not even have enough genetic material from that Indian relation to produce the straight hair like that. You follow what I'm saying? So look at
Exactly.
these sisters, man. Look at these sisters' hairs. These Fulani women, man. You know, look at that sister, the little bun on top of her head. You know, ain't no weave.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are tribal sisters. You know, look at their long hair and the ability to grow long hair textures. And you know, some of our African American sisters might struggle with hair growth and things of that nature. It is due to stress, the medical conditions, the diet, the things that we've eaten, the chemicals that we've put in our hair. All of that stuff is contributing. But these are Native African women with Indian in their family. You follow what I'm saying? But I'm being sarcastic with that, but I'm just showing. So, I mean, you can go again. I do it all over again. Hold up. If you go and do another search, this is Yoruba women, right? Let me. Can you see that, Ali?
Yeah, I see it.
You type in Yoruba women or Yoruba braids. You know, you see
The,
that texture of hair can be
and
straight hair, can be able to be manipulated and braided and styled and fashioned into anything, you know. So you will see a sister like that. You follow what I'm saying? And you
mm-hmm.
say, hey, that sister got Indian in her family. No, that's her traditional African hair and her freedmen African hair that descends from a variety of different genetic stocks coming from Africa, particularly from the western coast of Africa. And that's
Mm-hmm.
all I got to say about that, brother. You want to add to that?
Yeah. One of the things that um you'll find in like I think it's a colonial law from Virginia. I believe it's Virginia. Could be South Carolina, but I believe it's Virginia. Well, one of these colonial laws, it talks about who the ancient Berbers were. Talks about who the ancient Berbers were. And they talk about the term Negro being reserved for those people of the ancient Berber stock.
Come on.
Right. And this is a colonial law, right? This ain't no, this is right here in what became the United States of America, one of the colonies. The term Negro was reserved for those people who were of the ancient Berber stock. And one of the things that we realize through the research of certain people, like the sister Marnichi, right? And she's done a lot of work there in terms of the ethno history of the people known as Moors. Um, what we realize is that a lot of the West African tribes, believe it or not, that were brought from that continent to the Americas through the slave ports of Georgia and South Carolina were people of the so-called Berber stock, right? Multiple tribes of people that the Berber stock is consistent of, multiple tribes of people, and that would include your Fulanis and your Hausas and even Mandinkas and etc. The people of the Senegambia region and so forth. A lot of these people are considered of the Berber stock, right? They call them Negroes, but at the same time, these are the people of the ancient Berber stock. Right?
Right.
And a lot of them were West African peoples that were brought here. And so when we talk about hair texture, excellent point that you brought up. You can now go back into certain ancient Berber stocks of people in West Africa and see very similar hair texture to what many African Americans have. Very similar, from the kinky to the straight. All Berbers don't have straight hair, and all of them don't have kinky hair. You have that range of mixture within the various Berber tribes, or tribes of people that could be considered a part of the Berber stocks. You understand? And so at the end of the day, it doesn't, to the point you're making, very much easily something that could be attributed to African ethnic stocks who have from kinky hair to straight wavy hair, curly wavy hair. You can even see that in some of the what do they call them? The Aboriginal people of Australia, dark-skinned people with blonde hair and curly blonde hair, right? And they're not even necessarily mixed with Europeans.
Come on, right?
So everything doesn't come from Europe. Everything doesn't come from Native Americans. Some, you know, you have these different things in different places, and if you do research on this kind of stuff, you'll see it. And so I have uh, a niece, right, who has very wavy hair, but that's because she has an ancestry that links her back to Madagascar through her mother's family. You see what I'm saying? But those people, if you look at the Madagascar people, these are people who are descendants of Africa as well.
I'm about to pull it up right now. You could go ahead and continue going. I'm gonna pull it
Yeah,
up. You're building on it.
yeah. So, you know, I think if people are just using phenotype and a lot of their stuff, the claims that they're making is this, their pseudo claims that are based solely on phenotype. So like how you mentioned, I think you mentioned it, where they'll take a picture of Scottie Pippen and put it up against somebody that looks similar to Scottie Pippen and say, see, you know, this guy, he looks like somebody from the such and such islands of somewhere in the southeast islands of such and such. And they use all of these kinds of look-alike science, right? You know, this looks like this, so this must be this. Because it looks like that, then it must be that. Or because this sounds like this, then it must be this. It must be the same thing. But it's not true. And so you have, you know, you have these various people of African stock, right, who have various types of textures of hair. Everybody's noses aren't the same. Everybody don't have thick lips and broad noses coming out of Africa. You know, these are like, you know, a lot of this stuff too is European stereotypes that have been put on our people. If you look at that image right there, that girl on the right with the head wrap on, right? She this is a Madagascar woman, right? These people
Right,
migrated from, you know, the Madagascar is right off the coast of Africa anyway,
right.
on the east coast. So these are
That's a
people of African stock. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, you're talking about people who have various phenotypes, various genetics, all kinds of things, right? And it's a range of looks on the African continent, and everybody's not mixed with Indian or European. So, you know, this is something that is another myth that has to be addressed as well, because, you know, they try to attribute, you know, everything to Indians, right? And I tell you, my hair is wavy. I have wavy hair, like, you know, what somebody might call good hair, believe it or not. But again, when my family did their answers, my sister did her DNA genetics, there was no a very little so-called Native American ancestry. Very little. It was so minuscule that it's almost it doesn't even make sense to even talk about. Something like 1%, something like that. And, you know, that plays very little of a role in who we are genetically. You know what I'm saying? Very, very little. A large majority of our ancestry is of
right.
African ethnic stock, and we had some European ancestry in there. We had, be honest with you, according to the genetic testing, it had more. We had a little more European ancestry in us than we did any Indian.
Right. That's a fact, brother. And that's how, you know,
And
You
we
know
ain't
that,
claiming to be white people. How about that?
right?
We got more we got more European ancestry in us than we do Indian, and we ain't running around claiming to be white. So that it's stupid.
Right. Indeed, man. Because just like when I look at my ancestry, I gotta reset my password and all of that kind of good stuff, so I won't be pulling it up. But when you look at my personal ancestry, man, I have I think it's like the Native American ancestry. I think it pops up to either 1% or less than 1%, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Um, and the whole let me see if I can pull his app up. Give me 1 second, brother. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's good for people to be able to see your ancestry.com. And this is what I would challenge Top Cat to do. Show us the records. Show us the actual records. Because I don't mind showing the records of my family. I don't mind showing the birth records and death certificates and social security indexes, because most of that stuff is for people who have already passed on anyway. So it wouldn't be nothing you could do with it. There would
right,
be nothing you can do with that information. So I wouldn't mind showing it. You know what I mean? And marriage licenses, autopsy. I mean, not autopsy. What is it called? Coroner reports. I've come across a number of coroner reports as I'm going through my genealogy, tracing my ancestors back. Reports from the coroners, which has information on it. You know that the coroner, reports have information about the person who died. It talks about their fathers and their mothers on there, so you can find information from the coroner reports, where they were born, what their names were, how old they were, the years all of that kind of stuff. So that social security, draft registration records, all of that kind of stuff is good to be able to show. And so that's the kind of thing I would challenge a person like a Dane Calloway or somebody making the kinds of claims that he makes, is to show us your records. Show us your records, and don't be afraid to take a DNA test to see if you share ancestry. I don't even care if they come back with Native American DNA in your test. But don't be afraid to take a DNA test to see if you share some kind of genetics with the people of West Africa, because that will be the tell all when it comes down to everything that you're talking about. Do you share genetics with people of West African ethnicity or not? Yes or no? Because your claim is African Americans ain't African. And so if that's the truth, then you should share no genetics with people of West Africa, none whatsoever.
right. Exactly, brother. And that's the man, and that's that's the whole thing. You can't get around that, man. And but the bottom line, man, a lot of these people are hucksters and hustlers, man, and they may have a few people who may have a sincere notion of being connected to something, but doing it, without knowledge and ignorantly and stuff like that, man. But the bottom line, a lot of those proponents of that stuff, those people are crooks, man. And
Yeah.
this Top Cat, clown, which that's all he is, Oh man, and man, let me get off on the thing real quick. Anybody that got to run around talking about, man, I'm the legendary Top Cat, like they some kind of rapper or DJ from like back in the day or something like that, man. That person ain't sincere. What's your real name? What's your Indian name? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Well, like what you was the point that you was, man, said, bro, I don't want to hear that shit. Come on the show and I want you to speak in your native language.
How
I don't
about
want
that?
to hear you talking the slangs and the words that was created by the descendants of freedmen. Come on with your Native American stuff,
How about that?
and
How about that?
man, that's the bottom line with that, man. These people are crooks, and I just regret that a lot of these people, follow these clowns, man. And
Hmm.
I'm proud of what my ancestors did in Freedmen, coming up out of this stuff and getting into politics and trying to overthrow a system, man, that killed people. Man, these people went around the world and wiped out entire tribes. You know, a lot of these Native Americans, they were wiped out, man. Never to be found again, you know? And our people survived that, man. The beatings, the whippings, the killings, the lynchings, the rapes, the robberies, the land, man. And you just want to give all that away to take somebody else's culture?
And let me tell you this about the Tamiqua Indians that he was talking about. Them people don't exist no more. They don't even exist anymore. If you look at from what I saw about them, those people went extinct not too long after their contact with Europeans.
Wow.
And one of the things that we realized got the respect. Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry about
all good. All good. Can you, now what stat you got pulled up there?
This is my ancestry.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if they can see it. I'll try to let me know if it blows up.
Yeah, it's blown up.
Okay, so here we go. This is Grim Freedmen. This is my ancestry. 90% sub-Saharan African, right? The breakdown of that, 72.3% West African. Of that, 26.6%, excuse me, is Nigerian. You know? Another 25.6% of that is Ghanaian, Liberian, and Sierra Leone, right? Another 8% of that, 8.1% of that is Senegambian and Guinean. You follow what I'm saying? So, you know, basically, I'm a descendant of the Western Sudanic empires.
That's right.
The other 12% is broadly West African, which means that, you know, you contain genetics that's common to all people in West Africa. That's basically what that means. Now, that's the West African, just to break down. Now, I also have a Congo component to me, right? Because we know for a fact that there's an area in my area that they call Congo Square. So a lot of people come from the Congo. So another 15% or 15.7% of my African ancestry is Angolan and Congolese. And a very small percent is south, like 0.9%, that maybe represent maybe one super distant ancestor that was from East Africa. You follow what I'm saying? 0.9%. And the other one is 0.9% broadly Congolese. Now we go to the European part. So you got 8.8% in totality. The Northwestern European, 5.2%. 2.1% is French and German. I live in a French territory, so I know that I got some French slave master illicit relations. 0.7% British and Irish. 0.5% Scandinavian. Broadly Northwestern European, right? 1.9%. Now, here's another interesting thing. The Southern European, with Spanish and Portuguese, 3.95%, right? Of that. So that's what, almost 9% European, 8.8% European, right? So here we go with the Indian shit, right? Central and South Asian, 0.8%. That may represent what, a distant ancestor or two, maybe. And the crazy part about it is that they saying that this is Southern Indian and Sri Lankan. So that might be hell of a long time ago.
Yeah, and I'm gonna tell you, your Indian is different from the American Indian stuff that they're claiming. Yours is like actual like Hindustan Indian kind of ancestry. Theirs is like this European contrived Indian identity, you know, that them people accepted in order to get federal benefits from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yours is different. Yours is actual like Hindustan, and it looked like you even had some Madagascar going on over there. They had the Madagascar land highlighted next to Africa, right next to Africa.
Exactly. Yep. So yeah, so that goes to show, you know, and like when you look at my sister, like when you see like a lot of those sisters that we show, you know, man, my sister look like those. You know, my daughter look like those people, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, man, but that's, you know, that's your boy, Grim Free.
And I'm gonna tell you, your your DNA findings is very similar to what my sister found about her and our family. Very similar. That just goes to show you that the amalgamation that took place in the American colonies in the United States under slavery was very similar for all of us in terms of the admixtures of the ethnic groups of people that were involved in the mixing.
Mm, absolutely. You know, I even have a trace 0.3% Filipino, and we knew that they have some maroon uh Filipino communities that landed in this area, you know.
Mm.
So, like I said, you know, I don't know how far that goes back. I mean, I can click on some of these things, but you know, I got some other personal information that's connected to these links that I'm not willing to share, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But, you know, so I'm not gonna click it, but that's the breakdown, man. So, man, I'm doing my ancestors, man, a grave uh disservice, man, by basically denying, man, my African origins, you know, and my
And so
Freedmen origins.
the question for Top Cat would be this. The question for Top Cat would be this. I would put that on the screen and I would ask Top Cat to disprove this using scientific methodology. Don't tell me what you believe. Don't give me ideas about Indians and shit like that based on some kind of photograph or some cartoon that you done found somewhere. No, disprove. Logic said he was backstage. Disprove this stuff through scientific methodology because you used a DNA testing kit in order to get these kinds of results. You know, my sister did the same thing. Everyone who gets those kinds of results has to use the science of DNA to get those results. You can't just make that stuff up, right? And so at the end of the day, what these people have to do is undermine the science with science. You can't just use assertions and conjecture to undermine science. What is your methodology? Don't give me pictures. Don't tell me, don't read to me about John Ross. John Ross doesn't prove your point.
Yep.
What up, Logic? What you got?
Yo, peace. Yeah. So, I know y'all brothers probably touched everything. I just wanted to say that when we talk about our specific group, we have to understand that we got a little bit of everything in us. But
Yes,
the
indeed.
problem comes in when people want to say that they're gonna deny some of their stuff and only acknowledge something that they think is exotic or provocative or something of that
Yes.
nature, right? So they
Yes.
think it's a new wave or it's cool to say, oh, what we really are is this and that, and they really deny what you truly are because out of that great mixing and those generations of amalgamation, you really have a new breed of human being on the planet. People
That's
don't
right.
haven't really taken a hold of that concept, but through the science of procreation with all of the mixing that was unnatural. There, like people don't get how unnatural American slavery was because it was even different than slavery you had traditionally. Because most slaves in a certain population were of a specific group, right? But in America, that was like a strange case because you had, or I should say, with the transatlantic slave trade in general, but specifically in regards to America, you had so many people who would have never had their genes mixed had it not been for slavery. So
Mm,
you had so much gene mixing going on in the gene pool that you have made a new breed of human being, right? So the true American, not the Europeans who came over here and create help work with us. I'm talking about those people who were forced into slavery through the slave institutions of America are a new breed of human being. They're a specific, different, distinct group. They're not a part of any specific original indigenous anything. And that's what I'm trying to get people to understand. You may be related because you're related, or someone in your family. I gave this example yesterday. So if my let's say my daughters, right? One of my daughters marries a Chinese man, right? And then they have children, and then uh uh their children have children, and then all my daughters end up having children. My son has children, and then they do their genealogy test, and then they find this Chinese man because or they're going to run into their kids, and they're going to bump into him because he come through some type of way, right? So they're gonna be like, wow, I got Chinese in my family, or my they continue to have children. Let's forget my other daughters. Let's just stay with the daughter who married the Chinese man. And they continue to have children. Their children have children, their children have children. And then 10 generations down the line, one of them do their ancestry, and they find that there's a Chinese man in there somewhere along the way. Like, wow, we got Chinese in our blood. So what they're doing is today is as if my great grandkids would say, oh, we really Chinese, because they have found
Right.
a Chinese person in their relation, and be like, yo, wow, we really Chinese family. You know what I'm saying? Because they had to have noticed all of these different groups of people in their family, but some of these people have chosen a specific relationship to elevate above all of the others relationships that's in their gene pool. Because you can't tell me like that there's that many of us who have a unbroken lineage continuity of indigenous people from root to fruit. And then that's not us. We are amalgamated people. We have a lot of mixing in that's what has created, and that's why the American Negro, the so-called African American, all the freedmen, all these different titles that they have put upon us, is because it's something new. While you have to name something that's new, so that's why people still looking for original name of our people and group, because it's a new breed of human being that was created. We're not solely African. None of us can say that I'm Fulani. I'm Mandinka. You know what I'm saying? I'm 100% any of that because of all the mixing. Same way you can't say that I'm 100% indigenous because you are
Absolutely.
not an original member, or your genealogy does not originate here, and it's not. And there's too much mixing to say that that's who I am. You may be related to some people who are. We accept that. You may be related to people who are, but us as a specific group are an amalgamation of a lot of different stuff that makes up this. And I gave the pit bull analogy yesterday on Clubhouse, but it's just like the pit bull. When they bred all of the other bulldogs in the bulldog line and the terrier line together, the Boston Terrier, the Bull Terrier, the Amstaff, the Staffordshire, all of these the American Bulldog, the British Bulldog, all these bulldogs, they bred them together to get a specific type of game dog that has specific traits, specific standards, and all of that. And they called him the American Pit Bull Terrier, which is a new breed of dog. So that pit bull is no longer just an American bulldog. He's no longer solely a British bulldog or a Boston Terrier. He's an amalgamation, a hybrid of all of that stuff, and has his own distinct
That's right.
characteristics. And that's how we are as a people. We are a new breed of human being, and we have our own distinct characteristics. So you can't just say, oh, we're indigenous. You may have some indigenous traits in you. Oh, we're African. You may have, and when you say African, you have to understand what people from Africa, because the families of Africa all have different distinct traits. They look
That's
a
right.
certain way. They have certain customs. They speak certain languages that make them distinctive from the other tribes and the other families. So we can't just say I'm Fulani or any of that, So we have to understand and accept that we are a hybrid people, and we are a new distinct breed of human beings on the planet as Americans. That's why I have the opinion that we are the only true Americans, and we are the only true Native Americans, because out of the 500 indigenous governments that was over here and nations of people that was over here when the Europeans and other governments came over here. Not one of them called themselves Indian or referred to them or identified as Indian, and none of them referred to themselves or had or called any of their nations America, or any of
That's
where
right.
they lived on this continent called it America. So, and when this American creation was manifested, the only people who had sole allegiance to that country was our people.
That's right. Everybody else has some country of origin that they can specifically point to. That's actual fact. Actual fact.
Yes.
Actual fact, man.
Yep.
Excellent point. And you know, I'm going to tell you something. That's exactly what I told Top Cat in the very first conversation. I really wish people would go back and listen to that shit. Said the same thing to him. Our people is a new group of people, a new tribe of amalgamated people, multiple ethnicities going to making up who we are. It ain't no, it's not just no one thing. And so, you know, and let me tell you this about the Timucua people. He calls them Tamiqua, the Timucua, right? Those people went extinct. Like I was just telling Grim right before you hopped on. Those people actually went extinct shortly after their contact with Europeans.
Yes, yes. They were a part of the several nations of people were wiped out by making contact with Europeans. You know what I'm saying? So when you have a high, and that goes another reason to show you how we're a hybrid people, because now you have hybrid immunity. That, and I'm gonna use the dog analogy again. When you have the purebred pedigree dogs, they're more prone to get sick than other dogs that you would call mutts, who have or a mixed breed, because when you have mixed things together, you acquire immunities from other gene pools. So that's how we can go anywhere, and we have all this immunity because we have all of this different stuff in our gene pool. So we was able to outlast the so-called natives around here, because our genealogy had built up such a strong immunity, because we got Europeans in our blood, we got African in our blood, we got a little bit of everything in here, because so we are a distinct, we're like a real, if you really look at how amazing we are and what was done to us, we're really the only example of what like a superhuman could possibly be in real life. We got all the greatest basketball players, the greatest athletes. We got all the greatest actors, the greatest musicians, the greatest song players, the greatest everything. We like us, and then all of that stuff we did was in the environment of raw terrorism and oppression. We've made all this advancements to the world and society under the worst conditions. Imagine if we had fairness and equality, what we would do. We would be running the entire planet. We've been the leaders of culture and style and science, and we've made improvements in architecture and everything and every facet of life under the worst conditions of oppression and economic exclusion, and being locked out of accessing capital, just being an exploited group in general. And we have been able to make all of these advances, great advances for the world, and still leading the world in far as style and culture and things like that are concerned. How we have to be a superhuman type of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I said,
yeah,
what
go
can
ahead,
we
go ahead,
do?
Josh.
he came back on and let the brother finish. Go ahead, brother.
I went out.
Yeah, you had dropped out.
Oh,
Yeah,
my
he
bad.
dropped off.
All right, go ahead.
No, I wanted to just echo something you were saying about, the idea about us being a new tribe. I was some years ago, I remember it was myself and my wife, and we were in DC with this Ethiopian guy that she met, became friends with. So we went and ate at this Ethiopian restaurant, and I was asking him about, he just was like working at a garage or something. I forgot what he was doing, but he ended up, his background in Ethiopia, he had like 2 degrees in like languages and culture and stuff like that in the schools over there. So he was telling me like how many languages that just disappear. Like he tries to take the oral accounts of languages and get them written down in books so the languages don't disappear. So that just shows you like some of those tribes back in the day, a lot of those tribes either got amalgamated into
other tribes, or got that they assimilated into other tribes, and a lot of that disappeared. Obviously, most of it was, or none of it was written down, or they got wiped all the way out by Europeans, or whatever the case may be. That so when you look at what is a tribe consist of, it's not just having a blood tie. It's also culture. It's
Culture.
also and when you look at us, that's why we're trying to say we are our own tribe. I mean, it's nothing wrong with trying to connect back to something in your ancestry. Maybe you can learn some lessons. Maybe there's some family you can connect with. That maybe there's maybe there is some legal claim you can make in terms of an inheritance that was stolen from you. But in terms of trying to substitute that culture for the culture of that we developed here on our own development as a new tribe in America, like our culture is unmatched in America, and it's not all 100% positive, clean, and pure. But guess what? You go back and look at the culture of some of those other groups back in the day. That tribe, it's not pure and clean either. Some of that stuff is crazy. They got some cannibalism. They got some human sacrifice. They got all kind of stuff in that culture. So I'm just saying, like, our people need to stop looking at the Negro, the American Negro, or the descendant of freedmen today as from an inferior position, just because we look at our position in American society as being at the bottom. No, we may be at the bottom economically and by many socioeconomic metrics, but if we look at our level of influence in the intricacies of our culture, man, that thing has shaped the world, man. It shaped the world.
Hey,
and it has made billions and trillions of dollars for folks around the world.
The simple. I want you to keep continuing or whatever, or if anybody else want to come in and build. But I just wanted to make a point. Just the simple word of how we use a word has changed the whole dynamic of something. Like you have a young brother or a group of young brothers. They call themselves the Hot Boys, right? Or Cash Money. They made a song called Bling Bling, and they started referring to their jewelry as bling. Now, everybody, regardless of your race, your color, your socioeconomic status, when they buy a piece of jewelry or they buy a ring, they call it bling.
That's right. So I want to just say two things real quick, just from the culture part, and then I'm gonna pivot to another point. The only real American food is soul food, right? The original American dish is soul food. All the other food cooking that people eat in America come from other countries and other customs and cultures. The only cooking style that originated in America or the Republic of America, not this particular land. And if you really look into the indigenous culinary history, it's really not that vast. They only eat one or two different things. They don't have a real vast culinary culture. But when you talk about baked macaroni and cheese and collard greens and cornbread, and Hoppin' John and things of that nature, that is the original. Because again, America, not the continent, the country. That is the real American cooking. That is the original American dishes right there. We invented that cooking style. Here, fried chicken and things like that. That is the original American dish, and we fashion and shape that as well. But an interesting point I want to bring up for the indigenous and the freedmen, right? You do have freedmen who come from an indigenous status, and what people need to understand in this space now, where people are latching on to their indigenous relationships and their genealogy, when it comes to the situation, because everything kind of meets when we start talking about reparations. All of these conversations start coming together when we start talking about reparations, right? Because everybody's trying to get some type of grievance addressed. So, but what people don't understand when they come in this space and start saying, no, our people are the real freedmen. No, you do have some freedmen or some people with freedmen status that are in the native tribes. But the difference from those freedmen and our freedmen is that those freedmen have made treaties, who are a part of these tribes, made treaties with the federal government. And those treaties outline what type of conditions and what type of things those people are supposed to have. So if those tribes are not getting them what they're supposed to have in that treaty, there are specific agencies that they can go to for that. The Department of the Interior, they can go to their tribal chief. If the tribal chief's not recognizing them, because in the treaties of 1866, right, Cherokee treaties, the Choctaw treaties, and Chickasaw treaties, and Seminoles and whatnot, the government had, and this is another good point. It's not like these nations wanted to give equal tribal rights to the freedmen, who were largely of mixed or African descent, but they weren't the pure blood natives or whatnot. They were considered freedmen, because we know you had slaves who had escaped and sought refuge and lived among indigenous folks, and then you had slaves who also captured and enslaved people as well. But the United States government in these treaties actually had to put requirements and force these people to give them equal rights under the customs of their tribes. Under the treaties, they had to force that on them, and basically enforce the merits of the 13th Amendment onto these tribes, but tailor it to where they get all the tribal recognition that they're supposed to get. So they're supposed to take them treaties and go to the Bureau of Indian Affairs or the Department of the Interior or the Supreme Court and say the tribal chieftains are not honoring the agreements of the treaty that they have with the United States of America. We have proved our lineage, this, that, and the third, and they won't give us. We supposed to be in the DOS rolls, regardless of whether they made this blood standard that we can't meet, because according to this treaty here, they knew we wasn't going to be able to meet the blood standard, because they made the distinction that we were a different group that was living among them, but we deserve the same status and rights as all other tribal members. So that's their fight. Our fight is as citizens, is a citizen's grievance with the federal government. It's not a treaty. We don't have a treaty that we can go through, or agencies set up like the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Department of the Interior, who has representation for these type of matters, right? Because they have government to government relationships. That's what they need to understand. So if they knew more about government, I don't think we would bump heads as much. But I think they're trying to shoehorn and latch on to us, because they think that we can walk the same road to reparations. But our road and your road is very different. Your path for justice is your path. You walk that path, it's going to be a hard fight, but it wouldn't be as hard as what we have to do. So I don't know why y'all want to latch on to us and just make it harder for us, when y'all already have like a pathway to get grievance. Because if you can prove that you are related to these tribes, there's treaties that have to be enforced, and then you have a pathway to the Supreme Court, to the so
Absolutely.
do that. There's no need to try to help make our already mission impossible more hard. You know what I'm saying?
I just want to say this real quick, just real quick on what you're saying, and then I know Ali probably want to go in, but I would say that, man, the numbers of people that we're talking about that will fall into this type of scenario is probably so minimal. You're talking about that would mean these people none of their, like, all right, that's 1866. I had a great grandfather who was born in 1890. He died in 1994 at 104. No, he's born in 1889. He died in 1994 when I was 9 years old. He was 104. So, but that means it was like his father probably wasn't even born in 1866. If you think about that. So that means you got to go back another 1 or 2 generations before that to get to somebody that might even be related to somebody that will be a part of a claim like that. So that means so many generations later. So you have to find somebody that did not. So that means none of those people that came from that time would intermarry or have children with people or somebody who had an ancestor who was enslaved. It's like it's a hard thing. What I'm saying is the numbers of people that would even qualify for that in that category is so small, and you would have to prove that that, you know what I'm saying, you have to find, like, I think that it's just not even worth like people trying to and now if you are one of those rare people, obviously it means something to you. But the vast majority of us, and probably 99.99% of us, is not, that's not going to apply to. So I don't even know what people people are trying to do in terms of doing something different outside of what we're talking about with reparations. It really doesn't make sense, and I think it's a waste. A lot of that stuff is a waste of time in terms of the criteria is what you need to prove that you have an ancestor who was enslaved, and you had to classify as Negro, Black, African American, whatever on official government documents before a program instituted. I mean, for most of the people that's claiming that they had indigenous because they cherry picking somebody in their lineage, that would apply to them. So I mean, and if you don't want it to apply to you, that's fine too. Like I don't think,
and that's a good
that's
point,
fine.
because
Go ahead.
and I think that they don't really understand the criteria for our specific justice claim, because you know everybody's not promoting that same criteria. But like you said, there's no need to try to convince our people that we are really all indigenous because we have some of that in our blood. Because like you said, knowing that you have slavery in your blood, you fit the criteria. People don't understand, because the race classification system has really done a job on our people, fam. And we said the descendants of freedmen, right? If you were enslaved. So people automatically, subconsciously start thinking about melanin and pigmentation. But we're talking about people who went through a certain situation. If you went through that situation, you are qualified. And see, they argue about stuff that don't matter, because it's like, well, they call Indians Negroes too. Well, all you gotta do is identify one of your ancestors, and we already said that you fit into the criteria. So what are we arguing about? It's a misunderstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I had put a little screenshot up there that I think will be kind of interesting in terms of this particular tribe of people that was brought up as some point of reference for the Top Cat guy. Hey, Grim, you want to read that?
Yes. It says, while alliances and confederacies arose between the chiefdoms from time to time, the Timucua were never organized into a single political unit. The various groups of Timucua speakers practiced several different cultural traditions. The people suffered severely from the introduction of Eurasian infectious diseases to which they had no immunity. By 1595, their population was estimated to have been reduced from 200,000 to 50,000, and 13 chiefdoms remained. By 1700s, the population of the tribe had been reduced to an estimated 1,000. Warfare against them by the English colonists and native allies and the slave trade completed their extinction as a tribe soon after the turn of the 18th century.
Now, I would want to know, if I was Top Cat and those people claiming those 5 civilized tribes, I would want to know who were the tribes that unified with the English colonists against the Timucua people.
Right.
Because it seemed to me that the other people in that region were those so-called 5 civilized tribes that later on you worked along with the Confederacy against the United States too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, man, I would, to add to what you're saying, brother, I would like to talk about real quick, like, I mean, we cut it up already, but I just wanted to add to, you know, he showed the picture of the Moor with emeralds and said that was a Timucua Indian, right? And, right, you know, Brother Naheem just bust him and cut him all out, you know.
No, Brother Grim, he said that's a depiction of a...
No, I don't do that, Josh. Originally, he said that was a Timucua Indian when he showed up on BTP the first time.
That's right.
I'm talking about when he came back the other day.
First time, and then he came back when he said it's a depiction, and we're gonna deal with that. When he said that it was a depiction of a Timucua Indian that was trying to escape the fact that he was a liar, lying, saying that that was a Timucua Indian. He said it's a depiction. A depiction means that's actually something, but no, that's actually a Moor with emeralds. He was trying to do acrobatics. He was trying to do acrobatics with the word depiction. Now, when me and Ali was basically talking this morning, we brought up this thing that Ali made the point that the Moor with emeralds, which he used as a Timucua Indian, basically was created by German artisans, if I'm not mistaken.
That's a fact.
It wasn't the Germans who came in contact with the Timucua Indians. So the thing would, if that was a Timucua Indian, then it would have been a depiction of the Spanish and the Portuguese, who was the ones who was coming in the area, who had the dealings with these Timucua people. You follow what I'm saying? And then I added on to Brother Ali's point, and I said that there is no proof or evidence that those artisans in the 1700s ever came to the continental U.S. to meet a Timucua Indian.
Well, shit. I don't know when the Germans started coming, but according to that piece, the Timucua was extinct by the I don't know, the early 1700s, whatever, but I don't even know when Germans originally started coming. And this piece was commissioned, I think that Moor with Emeralds was commissioned in like around 1724 or something like that.
Right.
Is when it was sculpted. I don't even know if Germans were coming to the colonies in 1724. I really don't know. You know, right. Anglo people are of Germanic stock. I understand that, but the actual Germans from what is considered Germany, I don't know if they were here in 1724. Maybe Logic Noah or Josh or somebody, but I don't know about that. And so, again, a primary source for the depiction of what a Timucua Indian would look like would be either the Timucuas themselves, first and foremost, or two, the Spaniards who encountered them in the 1500s. Those would be what I would consider primary sources of a depiction of what those people look like. Not some German in Germany, because the guy that did it did it while he was in Germany, and he did it as a depiction of a Moor. And it's called the Moor with emeralds. So I don't, Moors we know are historically, these are African people. So I don't know what the heck this guy was talking about. None of it makes any sense.
Indeed. Hey, and I want to address one thing. This the last comment, man. A real good sister, Ax just sent me a message, and I want to read it, and I want to address it. I want y'all to go into it, in regard to our Freedmen language. The sister basically said, "Good morning. Hope all is well. I've learned so much from you, Naheem, and the other BTP brothers on the Freedmen. Thank you. I'm still reading and doing the research. I've been vigorously working with my Lieutenant Governor, Census, and OMB for a name designation of Black American descendants of chattel slavery. I'm requesting that we have our name designation on all census documents, applications, and legal forms. We, in my opinion, were discriminated by being left out of the 2020 census and all of their other surveys, while other Black groups were specifically asked to designate their nationalities. It's imperative that we have the name disaggregate. My screen disappeared. Give me 1 second. The data for us in our fight for reparations. I have a brother working along the same lines with me, and he suggested the name designation of the Freedmen. My only concern, and this is her question, my only concern with using Freedmen is that it's already been used and used/supported, and we got played. I personally would prefer the BADOCS to encompass all blacks that were enslaved and even possible overlooked by the Freedmen's Bureau itself. Am I wrong in my thinking? Do you have any suggestions? Have a wonderful day. Y'all want to touch on that?
Well, I'll say this, right? Um, in terms of the OMB, right, which put out what's known as Federal Directive 15, dealing with racial classifications and ethnic identities in the United States. One of the things that they do say, and this is very important that we keep this in mind, is that there's a disclaimer that says the racial classifications and identities that they put forward are not scientific or biological in nature. Now, if you pull up Federal Directive 15 to the sister, you're going to see that, right? And so the federal government, even within these classifications and identities, are telling people that they're not based in science or anthropology, right? So we got to keep that in mind first and foremost. Secondly, there's only one nationality in the United States, and the nationality for the United States is called the United States of America. That's the nationality that we all carry. Now, in terms of us as an ethnic group, right, we never really had an ethnic group in the OMB. Freedmen wasn't an ethnic terminology. It was just a reference to the people who they call members of the African race, right? If you go through the government documents, what you're going to find are the terms Negro, you're going to find the term Black sometimes, and you'll find the term colored, you know, and these were all terminologies that were actually designated to people who were either enslaved or formerly enslaved and previously manumitted, etc. Right? Negro, Black, sometimes Black. Black was rare until the 1900s, and colored, all as references to us. And I'm gonna find you a definition about the term colored person from the actual Black's Law Dictionary, which a lot of people are not necessarily aware of, where the term colored person referred necessarily to people who were enslaved and people in this country, right, who were enslaved. And so I'm gonna pull that up so people can see that, because I know that the term people of color now has been broadened to include a bunch of folks. But these are not legal.
Basically, they hijacked the term colored.
Yes, but these are not legal terminologies. And to the sister's point, even though she's looking for an identification, they want an identification on the census, etc. None of those identifications are legal identifications. They're all being used for the purposes of social classifications, racial or ethnic, right? None of them have any law that says that you have to identify as anything, and that if you do, there's any kind of legal ramifications if you don't, etc. There's no law that supports any of it. They don't have to recognize anything other than the name citizen of the United States and United States of America. Those are the only constitutional names. The only constitutional names. So if you want an ethnic name, that's something that the people as a group have to agree upon. You understand? So a lot of people wind up agreeing on the term African American over time. That's an ethnic terminology that was supposed to be used for the descendants of the freedmen, because the thinking that Jesse Jackson had at the time when he and others came to the conclusion that we needed an ethnic name was that other people had ethnic names, but we didn't. The only names we had was Negro and Black and colored. And he says none of those accurately describe who we are and what our ancestry or lineage is in relation to being descendants of the inhabitants of Africa. So, for instance, you have Jamaican Americans. That's an ethnic name in the United States for a citizen of the United States of Jamaican ancestry. Jamaican American is an ethnic name. Same thing with Indian American, somebody from the Indian continent or the country of India in Asia, who is now a citizen of the United States. Indian American is a ethnic name for them. So Same thing with Somalian American. Same thing with Nigerian American. These are no longer national names. These are now ethnic names. The national name is United States of America. That's the national name. That's the constitutional name. And so if we're going to have an ethnic name that we as a tribe of people agree on, that's something that might need an actual conference, because previously there have been conferences about coming to a conclusion on a name for the group. There were conferences, there have been polls that have been taken where different people were polled as in terms of what name would you prefer, Afro-American, do we want to use Black, do we want to use Moorish American? And believe me, Moorish American was actually on the poll, and it polled very low in the polling. Most of the people who were polled in this one poll back in the 1920s, I believe it was. Most of the people that were polled chose Negro as the name that they wanted to go with, even over Afro-American, over Black, over Moorish American, over Ethiopian. There was a bunch of names that they were asked which one they wanted to go with. And most of them chose Negro in the early 1900s, believe it or not, over everything else. And so, that's just my idea. I know Brother Logic can build on it, but I just think that any ethnic name that we come to, whether it's descendant of slavery, which I don't agree with, because I don't think that we're descendants of slavery. I think that we're a descendant of the people who came through that unfortunate institution, but I don't think we're descendants of slavery. And I don't have a problem with the term freedman as an identity, specifically for the purpose of reparations and identifying the people who were emancipated from chattel slavery by the 13th Amendment and will do reparations during the Reconstruction period. I don't have a problem with the term freedman.
Yeah. So I agree with every man. You really knocked that out the park, brother. And I agree with everything you said, man. Right and exact. And it just really speaks to our strange circumstances of how we originated as a specific group of people. Like, we're searching for an ethnic group, but the way ethnicity is really decided comes from a more connectiveness historically and geographically than anything that we have. So if we look at what would we have as an ethnicity, everything that ethnically makes us who we are outside of all of the mixing of the blood. But if we look at culture, if we look at geography, we're Americans. And so to be a United States of America, the USA, United States of America, is our nationality. But like I said earlier when I came on, if you had to really think about, with the understanding that none of these so-called indigenous people, or none of these indigenous people, ever originally referred to themselves as Indians, and none of their nations had the title of America in it, and none of them referred to this continent, Canada or South America, as America. None of them referred to that stuff. We are the only real Native Americans. We're native to the forming of the Republic. We was here when the Republic formed. We was here when it was sustained, and we built it, and we created it and made it great. My thing is, ethnically, I'm American. You know what I'm saying? My nationality is United States of America, but I and people like me are the real only, in my opinion, are the only true Americans, are the real true original organic Americans, because we was built with the American institution that was very, very specific on how they bred people. You know what I mean? They didn't
That
do it
makes
to
all the
everybody.
sense in the world, man.
Yeah, they didn't do it to their families. They wasn't breeding all that stuff into their families. Right. They did it to ours. You know what I'm saying? And they still had lofty connections with their kin that was still in Europe, because they still got family member over there, and they, like, you could read Thomas Jefferson was constantly making trips to Europe. Benjamin Franklin constantly making trips to Europe. All of these people still had relationships in Europe. So like I said, we're the only people that originate with a sole allegiance to this country. So right. If we are going to be anything, in my opinion, ethnically, we are the true Americans. You know what I'm saying? I would say we're the only Native Americans that exist.
Right. And you know, to add to what the sister asked me as far as the Freedmen terminology, you know, she basically stated that, you know, we got played, you know, using that terminology, and she's 100% right. But see, that's where you actually get into the grease of this thing that basically grease the wheels as far as the argument of reparations. And you know, I'll read part of the response that I gave the sister. You know, I told she's not wrong in her deductions. Yeah, you know, we got played basically using many terms, because at the root of the thing is anti-blackness universally. You know, that I'm just adding that. But then I told her, I said, Freedmen is used to connect us. I'm sorry, Freedmen is used to connect us to being played, thus making the case for reparations. For
That's right.
Absolutely.
number one, there was legislation way back then that was made for freedmen, right?
Yes.
That's number one. It was specifically made for freedmen. The Civil War took place and was basically let go. But then I went on to answer the sister like this. I said, number two, the U.S. government, and this is crucial, the U.S. government allowed the Southerners to continue their abuses of federal law, in particular the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment, which are the Reconstruction amendments to the Constitution. Because basically, after this Civil War, you know, basically this was the second founding of America that
Yes.
people don't really realize. This was a total reconstruction of not the South, but really like the whole country.
Yes.
And the whole thing, we talked about this the other day with the migrations. And we also are currently reviewing Charles M. Blow book, The Devil You Know, a Black Power Manifesto. But when we talk about the Great Migration, the Great Migration was done as a result of the fact that these people would not follow the 14th and 15th Amendment. So that left a lot of people hopeless. That left a lot of Black people powerless and at the bottom cast of society, right? So a lot of our people started leaving the South. Because I think Charles M. Blow said 90% of our people lived in the South before, right after the Civil War.
Right.
90%. So we couldn't get any reprieve from the federal government, even though they passed these laws upon our behalf, right? So us linking back into that Freedmen terminology goes back to Reconstruction. I'm going to say it, Reconstruction, Reconstruction, Reconstruction. Because the Civil Rights Movement wasn't based upon any new ideas. I think I said this the other day on the other show. The Civil Rights era and its works was based upon the working and the reliving of the things that our ancestors had got done with the partnership of the abolitionists and the radical Republicans. You know, it was a revisiting of those things that were passed. It was basically a revisiting of the things that had already been passed. So by the time you got to Plessy versus Ferguson, which reinvigorated the separate but equal, that was a violation of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Well, namely the 14th and 15th Amendment, along with our promises for equal citizenship. So, no, sister, the point being made with the usages of that is that those activities continue from slavery through Reconstruction all the way to today with the redlining, the redistricting, redlining, the loans. Black people can't get loans, other opportunities, education, all of that stuff had been disparaged by people continually violating the Reconstruction Acts. So we use Freedmen not necessarily, well, you know, just like what Ali was explaining about the ethnic terminology, but point to the fact that we got played from then all the way to there. And that brings that, oh, let me go back to the civil rights thing. You got the Plessy versus Ferguson. You got the Civil Rights Act of, remember, they already had Civil Rights Acts. The Civil Rights Acts of 1866, right? What was the other, another Civil Rights Act
70, 75, I think. I think it was 1875 was another one. That was declared unconstitutional.
Right. And, you know, you have all of these things that were being passed by Congress. So by the time we get to the, you know, to the Dr. Martin Luther King and the Brown versus the Board of Education, this was basically all just revisiting Reconstruction era laws that had already been passed and was not being enforced and being violated by the southern states and also by the United States of America. So I hope that answered your question, sister.
Hey, I want to just say too, with the connecting piece, when she was like, it connects us to a time where we got played. It also connects us to some of the greatest times and the greatest accomplishments as well. So we don't want to just throw away that connection because it connects us to this great betrayal and the overthrowing of great accomplishments, but it also connects you to the accomplishments themselves with the statesmen and the political things. You had people who were the once slaves, and then and we read on the program, they said in a matter of year, we made 100 years of progress. That's what the Freedmen did. In 1 year, the Freedmen made 100 years of progress. So there's a connection to some greatness in that Freedmen history and that Freedmen language that I don't think that we should be ashamed of being connected to, and that we shouldn't want to throw it away, but we should embrace it. And also, I think that, you know, like Ali said, I think that the Freedmen should be a historical and a political identity. Like when we, until, you know, we can get actual freedom, but historically and politically, I don't think it'll ever fit an ethnic term, because it's just, it's not rooted in ethnicity and the requirements of what creates an ethnic group, but it does create a political group. And the fact that we are already recognized under the government as far as lineage is concerned and actual who the specific group of recipients should be, it's the best and most specific title to use for this particular justice claim.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, you're 100% right. You know, it's a lot of things that, you know, we won't, you know, we shouldn't throw away in regards to that, you know. And here I'm gonna share one picture of something, you know, of that greatness that you're talking about, brother. Let me get my screen share on real quick. And basically, you know, show what you're talking about. When you throw away Freedmen, let me see, hold on. When you throw away Freedmen, this is basically what you throwing away. I mean, not saying that the sister throwing away Freedmen. I'm just saying when, you know, when people, particularly like the indigenous people who talking all that crap about Freedmen, can you brothers see that?
Yes.
When you throw away Freedmen, this is what you throwing away. After the Civil War, you know, the Freedmen were basically put in charge, in control of all the state governments. Right here this is I don't want to say depiction because your boy used that, but this is a lithograph of the reconstructed governments, the extract from the reconstructed Constitution, and you see all of these great Moors, these great freedmen, right? These great brothers, these great Negroes, whatever you want to call them, right? You see them. All of these brothers was government officials after the during the time of Reconstruction, and there you got the lieutenant governor in the middle, Oscar James Dunn, and and all of the other officials and stuff. You see that? You see that powerful and they say the state of Louisiana with portraits of distinguished members of the Convention Assembly of AD 1868. You see, we was being put in power, but a lot of these, as we talked about before, a lot of these government officials were basically taken out of power, but through the disenfranchisement of the freedmen suffrage. And that's why a lot of people flee the South, because they couldn't, the white people were basically taking the governments back by force. And that's all I'm gonna say about
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, by force, by blood. Just keep this in mind, y'all. I think it was a 100-year gap between the time when a freedman was won a United States Senate seat, and the descendant of freedmen won the United States Senate seat again. I want to say it was like 1967 in Massachusetts, where there was a Senate victory, where it was a so-called black Senate black senator. But before that, I think the last one was 1867. So just understand that, and we had a black vice presidential candidate at that time. Like, it was a whole lot of stuff going on in terms of political victories that we were getting, and that's just the federal government. We can go down the line on the state and local governments, and we didn't start seeing any of those victories again for a long time, especially on the federal level. Maybe in some local areas where you got black majorities, you might have seen some there. But during the time of, like, you think about that. So it just goes to show you where we would. Yeah, I just want to finish the sentence. Where we would have gone if the things that Grimm described were in terms of law, civil rights laws, were enforced. Go ahead, Grimm.
Yeah, I want you to continue, but I just wanted to come in real quick because what you said, that we didn't see that again in a long time, that was a very interesting point, because think about it. We didn't see that again till Oscar De Priest, who was the first congressman, the black congressman that had been put in office since Reconstruction. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, but that was in the 1920s.
Yeah, that's Congress.
That was about 60 years.
And that's
right. 60 years after that.
But what I'm saying, that was Congress.
Yeah.
That was United States Congress.
That
means he was a House rep. The House, yes, the House rep. You can win a House seat. That's why we see a whole lot of black House members. But you don't see very many black Senate, because the Senate is like a statewide deal, or it's a larger, territory dealing with the United States Senate. It's two seats, and it's not based on having a black majority district. Yes, I'm not diminishing it at all.
No,
I'm just showing you the power that we had during that time.
I was just making a point about Reconstruction and how damaging it was that we didn't see one again until 1920s?
1928, 29. Yeah. So I'm not
definitely.
I just wanted to put all of the history out there, just as for the people that's listening.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just making a distinction between the House of Representatives and the Senate. So the Senate, just understand like how much power you have to get a senator a black senator elected. We just saw this year, and it took and everybody made that like the huge deal. Like, that was wow. Warnock got elected. He in Georgia. But we look, where was we had senators getting. I'm trying to pull up the names, but we had senators getting elected during the time where our people was just coming out of slavery. That is powerful. That means you having you having power to get enough votes to support this guy to help him win from the whole state population. That
Well,
is extremely. But one of the things that
what
also
well,
shows is that our
well, well,
voting block was tight there. Go
but
ahead.
you got to understand the difference between those times and now is that a lot of people, due to the war, had abandoned the states, and their population didn't look like they do today. A lot of people had abandoned. A lot of people did not have the right to vote because of their participation in the rebellion. It was a lot of vacancies for us. It was a very special moment in history. So those we can't really compare those races that were won then, even though they are great accomplishments and they show a lot of greatness. We can't really compare that to the political landscape today because it's very, very different. Those opportunities, unless there's another civil war, will never exist again.
Yeah, we gonna
Right,
build some more
right,
on that
right.
in the future, because there's some interesting ideas that we pondering now. But you know, I ain't
Yeah,
gonna
Yeah,
get
because
into that
you
till
got to
we
look
till we
at like
solve it.
all the military districts had took over in the South. The a lot of the abandonment of the South itself, the removal of all of those the Confederates owned, who were partaking who were held Senate seats had been removed. So there was openings that were taking place had like the amount of openings that were up for grabs. You'll hardly never see a situation like that unless there's a massive upheaval up in the country. And then just after the Great War, the Civil War, that just created so much opportunity. So it was really a real special time in American history because of all of the special circumstances. And our people arise to the occasion and we performed, and then, we had what happened, the overthrowing of the Reconstruction era. I mean, the Reconstruction efforts, and they reconstructed America to exercise white supremacy, and we were assassinated by the scores. But I was looking on what's another interesting point to the Freedmen title or identity is that not only, and I was reading the Senate website, not only are the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments referred to as Reconstruction Amendments, but they're also referred to as the Freedmen Amendments as well. And I thought that was interesting.
Powerful, powerful.
That's
The name is
Honestly,
powerful.
well documented.
I just want to say one thing real quick, and I'm not going to be long with it, Ali, but I just want to say because Logic was talking about the the process where we were able to lose that power, in the politics, and I think one maybe underlooked or overlooked, excuse me, act of Congress that aided in that was that Amnesty Act of 1872.
Right.
I might need to look at that Amnesty Act, because what that did was that allow a lot of these people who were disqualified from running for office under 14th Amendment Section 3. It gave them a way to actually start to get back into politics.
Yeah,
So
Logic addressed that before.
okay, okay.
But I mean, you
Yeah.
continue. I was just saying he addressed it before. We didn't overlooked it.
Oh, okay. No, no. I'm talking about just in general. I don't hear too many people outside of us talking about that Amnesty Act, because like I said, I didn't got into my ancestry before, and I'm like, how was this dude? How were these people, these slave owning ancestors of mine, that put secession documents for Virginia to get out of the Union, or to try to get out of the Union, and was a colonel in the Confederate Army. How does he then get to run for these different positions in the state government? Like, how does that happen? It happens directly at 1872 with that Amnesty Act.
Man, this is such a powerful era of history. I'm telling you, I don't know how people, like, we all should just be, especially the sons and daughters of freedmen. We should be masters at this history, Reconstruction history, up through civil rights era politics. It should be our area of study, and not only study, but our area of expertise. That's where we should be mastering that history. That we should, everything from you know, the Missouri Compromise, the Kansas Missouri Compromise, and all of these different things that came into play. We need to the Nebraska Act, like all of this stuff is really important information. Reconstruction history, what happened from 1865 up and through 1879, and what happened like we should be mastering this is such important. You don't really understand America until you understand like Reconstruction era history and Reconstruction politics, and you won't really understand America unless you really dig down deep into that civil rights era politics, because it's really always been about civil rights. You know, human rights, of course, but what people don't really understand is that when you see that Civil Rights Act of 1866 manifest, that's a civil right. That was a movement for civil rights, to have citizenship rights enforced for a specific group of people. So you have our people gave birth to civil rights activism and civil rights legislation in this country. There was no mention of the term civil rights before it had to be done in 1866. You know what I'm saying? So we should all, like, if you're trying to be an attorney, you historically and traditionally, we should be breeding civil rights attorneys. You know what I mean? We should just historically be breeding civil rights advocates, because like that's our culture. We mentioned a lot of parts and a lot of aspects of our culture earlier, but that's what I forgot to mention, which might be most important of it all, outside of the jazz and the food and the coolness and the soul and the music and everything like that we've influenced and impacted the world with. Our true spirit of our culture is freedom fighting and civil rights. Like, we've been the best freedom fighters and American liberators, and fighting for justice and civil rights is our culture. That's what we've always been doing in this country.
Actual facts. Well, you know, we're coming up on 3 hours, brother Green. I don't think we meant to be that long, but you know.
Yeah, bro. I guess we gonna close out, man.
Indeed.
Yeah, man. Bro, this was a good build, man.
Yes, it was.
I'm new to this technology. You know, Naheem, the master of this technology, man. But you know, I think I'm a down, because I was saying that I was gonna use this to do post show analysis, man, on inside the BTP channel, man. But I think, bro, I'm gonna try to download this one and upload this to YouTube, brothers. So with that being said, man,
yes, indeed.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, brothers. I'm gonna give y'all a chance to close out, man, and then we go say peace. You want say something, Josh, to close out? We coming up on 3 hours.
I am a reparationist. Peace.
Peace. All right, brother Logic.
Oh man, it was a great bill, brother. I wouldn't have been able to spend my lunchtime doing anything better, man. So I love building with the brothers every time we get together. And you know, government is the game and politics is how it's played, brother.
That's right. Yeah. I'll just say peace to the people, man. And you know, for whoever tuned in, I hope you get something valuable out of it. I hope we answered the sister's question with regard to ethnicity and you know, what shows up on the census. Basically, you can put whatever you want on the census, and can't nobody stop you.
Right. That's what's up, brother. And you know, I echo all of y'all sentiments, man. And I just want to say peace and blessings. And just remember, holy are you. Peace.